Well, investigators have revealed both the 54-year-old and his son had previously been questioned in 2003 over online threats about carrying out a school shooting. The teenager, Colt Gray, used a semi-automatic rifle in the incident and will be tried as an adult. Well, let's cross over to New York now, where criminal lawyer Deborah Blum joins us live. Now, Deborah, this is quite concerning, firstly, because they've been talking about this sort of thing prior to what has happened, and secondly, because the son, usually they sort of commit suicide, the person who's doing the shooting. He didn't do that. He's alive. Is this the reason, one of the reasons why they're also going for the father as well?
So, no, I actually believe it's because there's been a trend in the United States to prosecute the parents of children who commit these horrific acts. We saw that in 2023 with the conviction of the Crumbleys for their son's school shooting. And now we're seeing it here where this child was on a watch list. His father had guns in the home, and it's possible the police are investigating whether he actually purchased this weapon for his son used in this tragic shooting.
Do you think, then, that that has acted, in a sense, as a deterrent? Because parents, if they could potentially be tried for the crimes of their children, do you think that has worked as a deterrent in the United States?
Well, sadly, it hasn't worked because we've had this scenario before in recent history, very recent history, and it's still going on as it did here, where 2 teachers and 2 students tragically lost their lives. What I think is very interesting in the United States, though, is that children as young as 14 years old, such as Colt Gray, the perpetrator here, is being charged as an adult. I actually have a 14-year-old who's now 15 who is alleged to have killed a 13-year-old, and he's also being charged as an adult. As tragic and terrible as these shootings and murders are, these are children, and we are clearly doing something wrong in the United States where this continues to happen. And I don't feel, as a criminal defense attorney, that the answer is for these children to be charged as adults. Not that, yeah.
Well, but also, Deborah, you have this issue now where you're saying the parents are increasingly being involved in the charges and the prosecution and the all-round criminal justice effort. What has sparked that change with prosecutors moving more towards the responsibility of parents? What signalled that change?
Well, as you know, we've had so many of these school shootings in the U.S., and nothing seems to be stopping them. I mean, a common theme amongst them is that these children are gaming, they're using the internet to make posts. I think overall, there needs to be an overhaul in the school system where each of the schools has to have security when the children come in. I mean, that's a terrible thing that each of these schools, even in non-urban settings, need to have security, because security could prevent it, but that's not even enough. In the case that I have now, my client was able to bring a weapon, you know. It's just really tragic because there aren't enough steps in place, and that's something we need to look at. We need to look at the violence of children. We need to look at parents who continue to have weapons in their home that are unsecured, that their children are able to have. It's not very hard to be able to secure your weapon. So there's so many steps.
I was going to say, I noticed that you don't sort of talk about repealing any of the gun laws in America. And it seems that it's always, well, we need to maybe secure the guns or do this. I mean, why should anybody be allowed to have a semi-automatic weapon when that is purely for mass massacre? There's no other reason. And why would you have that and be allowed to have that when at the end of the day, that's its only function? That's its only function, unless you're in a war zone, which, well, they're not.
That's, you know, a very good point. I'm not going to put my position on guns here, but certainly this needs to be controlled, and there needs to be way fewer semi-automatic weapons. There just needs to be a complete change in how people have weapons, whether they can have weapons, who's able to get a weapon. There's a complete breakdown that someone's able to have a whole arsenal of weapons in their home, have children in the home, and then their child is able to access those weapons and even potentially buy a weapon for a 14-year-old. That is completely unacceptable, and why Colin Gray is being charged here. I personally, as a defense attorney, don't know that I see a large enough nexus for him to be charged with second-degree murder.
You think?
I can see the involuntary manslaughter. You know, there are legal definitions that need to be met, and I'm not sure that he's going to meet all of those definitions here. But parents definitely should be held accountable. You can't purchase a 14-year-old a gun.
Let's move on to this story in the US. The father of a 14-year-old boy accused of killing 4 people at a high school in the US state of Georgia has been arrested.
Okay, so this is an amazing story. This young man went to school on his second day and killed 4 people. He went with a gun. And what one discovers is that previously, I mean, you know, months earlier, probably last year, the FBI had gone to them and said, look, you know, on this website, your son is saying, you know, that he wants to kill people and school shooters. And the son went, no, I've been hacked. This really isn't me. And the FBI, they investigated and couldn't do anything because they absolutely know. So what did the father do? He went out and bought a gun, I mean, you know, an assault rifle for a Christmas present for his 14-year-old boy. And then, surprise, surprise, you know, somebody who is clearly got real problems, kills 4 people. And so the father is being done for second-degree murder.
And he's being tried as an adult, isn't he, the son?
Yeah, and the second-degree murder charge is pivotal here because second-degree murder charges in America means you're being tried for murder but also child abuse, and the child abuse being, which I think actually shows it's quite insightful for Americans at this point, actually, for the father to buy a gun for this 14-year-old.
Well, absolutely. And we did speak to a lawyer, and the death penalty is an option, potentially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially after what he's done.
What, the death penalty?
For the father, absolutely.
Oh, Nana, no, you can't possibly.
Why not?
Because it's against all human nature.
No, but it's available in Georgia. So you might say that, and that might be your view, but in America, in that particular state, it is an option. And I'm glad that that's an option, because people like that, and depending on what they come up with, I think that should be an option for people like that.
I think it is a warning to say, you know, actually, what on earth was happening here that you're buying your children guns?
Well,
and
that's
then
illegal. But they do that in America. I mean, you can do that
I know.
in America,
well, and every time people go, yeah, but shouldn't we do something about the law? They go, oh no. You know, this is terrible. I mean, you know, what we need is more guns, and then we can shoot the
people with the guns. Yeah, no, that's what's often happening in the States. I did actually ask the lawyer, why don't people talk about the gun laws in the States? And for some reason, or rather they don't. But there is no other use than mass massacre for an assault rifle. So why should anyone
it should be banned?
Be allowed to buy
there's
that?
no use for a gun other than to kill someone. But that is evil and that's wrong.
But those who would defend the Second Amendment in the United States point to a fear of government overreach, which is something now I think you're concerned about. Would you not fear the possibility that one day the state could take significant control over you? Other people defending gun rights in the States point out... I'll just finish the point. Other people... I will finish this point whether you like it or not. I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you 2.
Do you mean
on the second
with
point,
regard to actually carrying guns?
Yes, carrying guns. And often defenders of gun rights in the States, no, I'm not one of them, they will say that in places where the highest concentration of firearms are available, you actually have the lowest number of gun deaths. They point to cities where there is significant restriction on ownership, where there is more gun death. The problem here, they say, is not the weapon but the means. We have the same discussion all the time about knives in Britain. We talk about clamping down on knives. Is that really the problem in Britain with knife crime? You know, I'm not so sure it is.
I think it's the punishment. There's not enough punishment. So when you get caught with that knife, very little happens to you. If there was a potential for the death penalty or something like that, I think a lot of people, many would think
but also the number of
Listen, we have to go.
Accidental deaths from guns is appalling. I mean, children get hold of them. It is frightening, Charlie.